Hey, MCE crew, you might be surprised who the largest owner of gold is on this planet. We're going to talk about money today in its purest form. And the reason we're going to do that is because I want to do some level setting as we head into 2022. Now, everybody always makes these resolutions for the new year. Myself, I make one or two. Usually it is to read more. And I'll be honest with you, the goal I set, I usually fall short of it. So I've got to work on that. I'm not perfect, but I do set a resolution or two. Now, the other resolution that I set usually is to become more prosperous, to uh, go out of a year with more assets than I came into a year with. And I can tell you that this year that we're going into, 2022, is going to be an interesting year for me because we recently gave up an income source, a passive income source, so we don't have to do anything to derive money from. And it's done very well for us. We had to give it up because there is kind of a, I'll just phrase it as a non-compete clause that we didn't want to breach. We couldn't breach. And we're giving it up in exchange for what we believe is going to be a greater sum of passive income if we do the things we need to do and play our cards right in 2022, which we, and when I say we, I'm talking about my wife and I, which we definitely plan to do, play our cards right. So let's just level set here and talk about money. What is it? And who owns, in terms of an organization, who owns the lion's share of gold on this planet and why? Okay. Now, as we go through this, you might say, well, why are we covering this? Well, simply because we always want to look at what the wealthy are doing. And when we say the wealthy, of course, we mean wealthy individuals. We mean wealthy organizations as well. Because we can take, characteristics and overlay them onto our situation after we've done our due diligence. And if we're able to take some of those characteristics and, put them over our situation, then hey, look, if we watch Michael Jordan play enough, if we go out onto the court with him a couple of times, we're going to come out of that better at the game of basketball. So observing the behaviors of those who already have a lot of money and a lot of assets is going to see us in good stead. Okay? So let's go through this real quick, and then we're going to get to some of the organizations out there that own the absolute most gold, and you'll see why that is important. So I'm going way back here to an article that was in Zero Hedge a while ago entitled, Why Gold? Gold has an advantage that Bitcoin does not have and cannot inherently have. Bitcoin cannot catch up with this advantage that gold has, and that is time. I had a guy, we were having a debate. I mentioned this on the channel a while back. We're having a debate about the merits of Bitcoin versus gold. And my standpoint was, hey, they don't have to compete. Okay, it doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be one or the other. In this world today, there's so many people who just see so many situations as one or the other instead of examining the merits of maybe both, okay, or neither. So I was trying to convince this individual of the merits of gold versus Bitcoin and also why gold and Bitcoin may be something one might want to do. And I'm sure plenty of people are doing it. And we went back and forth for a minute. And I said to him, well, because he gave me a period of time, which was like a decade, where he said, well, gold hasn't performed very well in this decade. And look at that same decade and how Bitcoin has performed. And I said, well, that's great. But let's take a larger view. People in the pro-global warming, climate change lobby, they do this all the time. They'll say, well, for the past 100 years, yeah, true. But the planet is 4 billion years old. So 100 years is nothing statistically. It's not relevant. It's not a relevant amount of time. So, and then we also know that, just digressing for a second, or going off on a tangent rather for a second, we also know that the climate has changed on this planet inside that 4 billion years many, 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 many times. And most of the time, the 99% of the time, it hasn't had anything to do with humanity because we weren't here. But people will do this with Bitcoin. They'll say, well, for this amount of time, look at what Bitcoin has done since since its inception. It hasn't been around for 25 years. Gold has been around for literally thousands of years. We talk about this all the time, going back to the ancient Romans, and before that, the Egyptians, the Assyrians. Everybody saw gold as something valuable. We agree on it as human beings. Part of the reason why we agree on it is because it's rare. So let's move on. So that time factor is something that Bitcoin has just a long way to go before it can be fairly compared to gold. Nearly 2.5 millennia ago, Aristotle wrote from his treatise on money. Money serves as a medium of exchange, a store of value, a unit of account. In his treatise, Aristotle listed the characteristics of ideal money. Money should be divisible, which is why we don't use fine art for money. It should be fungible, which means that it should be able to be replaced by something identical to it, okay? This is why we don't use real estate as money, because my house is going to have some characteristics that are different from the house right up the street, okay? The location is going to be different. The layout is going to be different. Whether or not you can produce on that land and what you can produce might be different based on the topography, based on the amount of sunlight it gets, on and on and on. So that's why we don't use real estate as money, although real estate is an asset. And going back, fine art can be an asset as well. It should be rare, which is why we don't use iron ore as money, and so on. Aristotle concluded that only gold has all these attributes and is therefore the ideal money. Long before the formal gold standard, long before that, when kings, emperors, and republics issued gold coins, gold was the backing of the monetary system. Gold has preserved its purchasing power throughout history. We always talk about that here on the channel. Whatever you could purchase back during the times of Julius Caesar with 1 ounce of gold, you can still purchase that same amount of stuff for the equivalent of 1 ounce of gold. Now, right now, gold is trading just south of $2,000 an ounce, but you can still buy the same amount of stuff. You can't say that for the dollar. The dollar's been losing a percentage point of its value every month for like the past 18 to 24 months. So, people always say, well, when I was a kid, you could do this. Yeah, when I was a kid, you could take $1 down to the corner store and you could purchase some candy, a bag of potato chips, and a Coca-Cola. But you can't do that anymore. I don't think you can get a bag of potato chips for $1 anymore because of the loss in value of the dollar. However, if, let's say, a gram of gold purchased those things 20 years ago, it would still do that. And there'd be a lot of potato chips though. So gold has maintained its purchasing power during periods of high inflation and sharp deflation when the stock market or the currency collapses. Even during periods of chaos, of war, gold holds its value. During these periods, people will look for alternatives to place their cash. People are looking for that right now. So that gets me to who owns the most gold. Well, let's take a look at the top 5, starting with Russia. Russia is number 5 in the top 5. They own 2,300 tons of gold, and gold accounts for 23% of their reserves. This is a nation, and this is a nation, Russia is a nation that you could technically, they're fairly, they came back in the the early 80s, or was it the late 80s? Yeah, it was the late 80s. Russia, as we know it, was formed as a country. But look, let's keep it real. Russia is a place that has existed for thousands of years as a people, as a culture, and throughout that time they valued gold. They got 23. They've got 2,300 tons of it, and it accounts for 23% of their reserves. Number 4, France. Well, France has got 2,436 tons, and that accounts for 66% of their reserves. All right. Now, what else does Russia have? Let's go back to Russia real quick. Russia has a lot of land, and under all of that land is a lot of natural resources. So, again, we're just examining these countries from the standpoint of, what makes them wealthy, okay? And natural resources is one, but they obviously acquire gold in order to maintain their wealth and put it into their reserves as an insurance policy, pretty much, because, again, it's holding its value. Italy, 2,452 tons, a little bit more than France. This accounts for 71% of Italy's reserves. Number 2 is the wealthiest country in Europe, Germany. Germany has 3,364 tons of gold, and it accounts for 76% of their reserves. Now, these numbers are as of mid-2021, so this is relevant information. You might wonder, what about China? Because we've done a lot of videos on this channel about China and its gold, and how they're basically all of the gold that they mine in China and in Africa, because they are heavy in Africa as well, doing their economic colonialism thing that nobody seems to have a problem with. None of the social justice warriors ever mentioned that, but whatever. China's actually number 6. They have 1,948 tons of gold, or so they say, because they've been private about this. And I can't blame them. You wouldn't want to let anybody know you had all that gold, would you? But the figures that they're releasing say that they've got 1,948 tons of gold, and it accounts for only 3% of their reserves. So if we were to take them at their word, that's a far cry from, the number 5 spot, again, Russia. Now, you know who has the most gold in the whole world. You probably went into this video knowing that. Yeah, you're right. It's Ethiopia. No, just seeing if you were listening. It's the United States of America, with 8,134 tons of gold, accounting for 79% of the reserves of the United States of America. Huge. So, you don't hear Jerome Powell talking about it. You don't hear Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen talking about it. But the United States is sitting on, I was going to say a ton, 8,134 tons of gold. These countries also have reserves in silver as well. So they know what money is. They know the difference between money, which we've talked about the characteristics of money, and currency. Currency being just a unit of exchange that obviously doesn't have to be backed by anything but faith that the United States can use its monopoly on force to compel its citizens to pay taxes. That's all that the United States dollar, the greenback, is backed up by, is that sort of faith. That you'll go to jail if you don't pay your taxes. So pay your taxes. Just do things legally. It's much, much easier at the end of the day. So should you own gold? Oh, well, you got to decide that for yourself. But I think that what we've gone over today is a compelling case for ownership of gold. And I will also let you know that countries have been, according to the World Gold Council, central banks around the world bought 272.9 tons of gold in 2020. So these countries are net buyers of gold. They've been net buyers of gold for 11 consecutive years. So again, heading into 2030, and we're getting ready to hit 2022 now. So we got 8 years before we realize a new decade. Guys, you got to start to, acquire these assets big time. If your family members want a gift, we just finished with Christmas here, buy them an asset. Where do you find physical gold? Somebody asked me that a while back. What you need to do is just Google it. I'm sure there's a gold trader somewhere in your town, in your city, in your state. And you can exchange those dollars that aren't performing or are losing value. They're performing. They're losing value. You can exchange those dollars for gold, for silver. We've talked about this extensively on the channel. If you do own physical gold, I would strongly suggest that you figure out a way to store that gold that is safe, like in a safety deposit box or somewhere. And you don't want a whole bunch. You don't want 100% of your portfolio in any one thing, let alone something like gold that does not provide an income and does not appreciate in value in the way that real estate, stocks, bonds, your own company will. Okay. Remember, gold is a different type of asset. It is, its purpose, rather, is to preserve your buying power. It's to preserve your ability to hold on to your wealth. Whereas if you compare it again to the dollar, let's say we said, let's see, the dollar has lost 1% of its value every month for the past 24 months, approximately. Let's say you had $100 worth of gold and you had $100 worth of dollars. You had $100. If the dollar is losing 1%, let's just say per year. Okay, so you got $99 at the end of the year, although it's doing worse than that. It's losing 1% a month. Whereas if you had $100 worth of gold, that's going to maintain the purchasing power, maintain its ability to purchase $100 of whatever it was able to purchase, a year ago. Gold has typically performed in that manner. And look, all these countries, you think they're wrong about that? No, they're taking their cues from history, and they're taking their cues from countries that have long since turned to dust, okay, that prized gold as money, as real money, in the way that Aristotle characterized it. Okay, guys, so that's all for now. I'll talk to you soon.